The Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to trade for a wide receiver at this NFL trade deadline per multiple insiders. But instead, they should be looking at the cornerback position because that's a bigger problem on this team and a position that they need to fix. But first, before I get more into who the Steelers are interested in, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also like this video. Now, let's get right into it. So, many NFL insiders have said within the last week that the Pittsburgh Steelers are making phone calls or trying to trade for a wide receiver ahead of this NFL trade line coming up here shortly. And even this week, right after the Steelers lost to the Bengals, once again, it was reported that they're still looking for a wide receiver and gauging the market. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in adding a playmaker on offense. And whether that is a Jaylen Waddle, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, or somebody else, the Pittsburgh Steelers are definitely looking for that wide receiver number 2 to pair next to DK Metcalf. Because they probably realize, hey, Calvin Austin, he's injured, and behind DK Metcalf, we really have no depth. And you want to have a good pairing next to DK Metcalf and put more playmakers onto the field for Aaron Rodgers. Once Calvin Austin comes back, obviously that's a great addition, boost to this offense. But even adding another playmaker, you can never have too much of them. And obviously, I'll get more into why that's probably not a good decision based off the Steelers run their offense and why they should be maybe looking somewhere else instead first. But they are definitely looking. And some of the players who keep coming up are, hey, the Pittsburgh Steelers have contacted the Saints about Rashid Shaheed, contacted the Saints about Chris Olave, and those two, because the Saints are so bad, may be up for trade. And then the Dolphins, because the Dolphins are bad, it looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers want to trade for Jaylen Waddle. Jaylen Waddle may be expendable because of how bad they are. And they may want a draft pick to kind of rebuild some stuff there. And when looking at some other teams, the Raiders, you already know Jakobi Meyers have asked for a trade before the season even started. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have always been linked to Jakobi Meyers. So maybe that's a trade possibility there. But then there's other guys who keep popping up, like a Tyler Lockett, an Alan Lazard. And to be honest with you, unless you're getting someone who could be a wide receiver number 1, but in reality will slide into the number 2 role, I just don't see the point of trading for them. Because Calvin Austin has shown, when you give an opportunity, he can produce. And he has this season with the number 2 wide receiver role. He's done solid before his injury. And adding someone like Alan Lazard, Tyler Lockett, it just doesn't make sense. The Pittsburgh Steelers did that last year, adding Mike Williams, who used to be a number 2, number 1 receiver with the Chargers, and someone who's a big target. The Steelers just never put him on the football field. Never used him. Waste of a draft pick to send out for a guy you never played. And that's mainly because he wasn't catching up to speed as quickly, but also because Arthur Smith just doesn't use the number 2 receiver as a big threat. Yes, they could be on the field a lot, but in terms of running plays for them, he just doesn't do that. So trading a 3rd round draft pick, a 2nd round draft pick, 1st round draft pick for this type of receiver doesn't move me because it's not going to be used either way. Arthur Smith wants to use those big tight ends, put more tight ends on the field than wide receivers, run the football, or pass off of it. And usually, he only uses 1 receiver. And if lucky, Aaron Rodgers will throw to the 2nd receiver, but it's not a main priority in Arthur Smith offense. So that's why trading for a wide receiver should be the least of the Steelers' problems. And also, the reason why it's the least of the Steelers' problems is because they're still putting up points. Right now, they're averaging over 25 points per game. And they just put up 30 plus versus the Bengals. So they're competing. They're still putting up points. They're moving the ball on offense. That's not the problem. The problem is defense. The defense can't stop anyone. And I know it's hard to say this, but they need to add someone on the defense side of the ball. The reason I'm saying it's hard to say this is because they're the highest paid defense in the NFL. You shouldn't need to add another playmaker there. You shouldn't need to keep moving around people, signing people, training for people on the defense side of the ball. They should be ready to go, but they're not. And that's because the Steelers have made some bad decisions with who they're paying money to and who they've brought in. For example, when looking at the cornerback position, I believe that is the biggest position of need for the Steelers and has been for a long time, and they just don't address it. They address it by adding veterans who are in the last year of their career like Darius Slay, veterans who are past their prime like Jaylen Ramsey, other players in the past who are older as well. The Steelers just haven't addressed that position with youth, haven't addressed it with talent. And when looking at the position this season, they can't guard anyone. The quarterbacks have been terrible all season. And at the beginning of the season, when Jaylen Ramsey had that one interception, he was getting so much hype, so much boost by the Steelers fans saying he's played great. But I came out and said, hey, he got that one interception, but he let up like almost 200 yards in that game. So how can you say he played a good game just because he made one hard tackle, one good hit, one good interception, but let up 200 yards and lost the game because of it, or almost lost the game because of it, and made the defense look like trash all game? It just doesn't make sense. So that's what has happened continuously this season. Darius Slay lit up big yardage every game. Jaylen Ramsey lit up big yardage every game. Cannot guard anyone. And even Joey Porter Jr., even though he's missed some time, he's been injury prone. He's had a hamstring injury. And even when he's come back, he just doesn't look good. He gets penalties nonstop. And I have high faith that he can turn it around later on in his career, or maybe in a few years. But currently, adding a cornerback should be top priority, especially for a team, a defense that has Super Bowl priorities and thinks they could actually do it. It looked like the Steelers were trying to go all out for Super Bowl this offseason and want to add players, add veterans to this team to do that. So why not add cornerback? Because that's a main priority right now, biggest need for the Steelers team, not wide receiver. Because like I said, wide receiver 2 usually doesn't get used for Arthur Smith, and he would rather use tight ends. And cornerback is the main priority because Darius Slay, it seems like he gets injured every game, comes back in the game, does bad. Jaylen Ramsey lets up yardage even though he's supposed to be the number 1 cornerback on the team and supposed to travel with the main guys. He obviously can't do that anymore. Joey Porter Jr., I do believe he could do that, but the Steelers just don't give him the right opportunities to, and he gets penalties a lot. Also, it's a scheme thing. I know it's a scheme thing. I'll bring it up in a different video about why the coaching has been completely awful and kind of wrecked the Steelers' defense, even though they're supposed to be a good defense. But that's for another video. But the Steelers' priority is still cornerback, even if the scheme is terrible. If you're manned up on a wide receiver one-on-one and you lose every single rep, there's a problem there. And that's what's happened with the Steelers this season. Jamar Chase just went off. How do you let someone get 21 targets or whatever he got, 16 plus receptions, 170 yards, touchdown? How do you let that happen continuously, especially when it's mostly one-on-one coverage? At that point, your cornerbacks just aren't good enough to cover that guy, to cover anyone. And if they got exposed by the Bengals with a 40-year-old Joe Flacco, imagine how they would get exposed with the Josh Allen, with the Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts even, because we know the Eagles could turn around. But just a different team. If Joe Burrow was there, they would get exposed even more. So the Pittsburgh Steelers need to change that, and a priority needs to be cornerback, not wide receiver, ahead of this trade deadline, even though all the talk has been around wide receiver for the last few years. If they never traded George Pickens, this talk for wide receiver just wouldn't be there, and then the priority could be mainly cornerback. But because they traded away George Pickens, because they made some bad decisions, people talk about wide receiver more because that's a more flashy move. But to me, cornerback has always been the sticking point because it's just always been awful. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think the Steelers should be targeting wide receiver like all the insiders say they are? And if you do, who do you want them to add? Who do you think they'll add before this trade line? And do you believe, like I believe, or don't, that the cornerback position should be the biggest priority, not wide receiver? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and who would you add to that position? Also, this is the end of this video, so make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis, reports. Everything surrounding this team, I have it covered all season long for you with news analysis, but also updates on trade stuff. So make sure you stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications, share the video, and that's it for me. I'll see you guys all later. Till tomorrow, I'm out. Peace.